So today we are, I used to work in Estonia for Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications some time ago. And what I could see was that Estonian companies were looking very much toward Western Europe. But at the same time, sun is actually rising from the east. So when we look to Europe, we can only see our shadow. Whereas basically the main focus point for the 21st century's global economy will be in the other direction. And so today, basically, our plan is to discuss about what's actually going on in Asia, especially in Japan, because we have most expertise about that country. And so without further ado, I think let our great speakers introduce themselves. So Eva, maybe you go first.
Konnichiwa, everyone. I am Eva Ponomarjov, and I'm the director of Estonia-Asia Trade Agency. So we deal with all of Asia, which means that we help you to get to these markets. And what I mean by that is India, Korea, China, Japan, and now we're going further and further in Southeast Asia as well. But today I'm very mindful that this is a Japan focus, and we also have a very strong Japan focus. Pleasure to be here.
Please.
Great. Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here as well. So I'm Eriko, and I'm really an investor at heart, a VC. So I've been doing this for 7 years or so, and most recently at a firm called Empower Partners, and previously at Fresco Capital, and then before that at Mistletoe. And amongst those 3 VC firms, I've been investing in Estonian startups, for example, Pipedrive, and they're very, very successful, so I'm very happy about that. And so right now I'm also looking for other Estonian or Baltic or Nordic startups to invest in at Kind Capital, which is my new consulting and VC arm. And I've seen companies like Pipedrive enter into Japan and Asia, and I can see the potential for building long-term relationships with companies in Japan and successfully navigating Japan. And we realize it is hard. It is a little bit annoying maybe, but once you get the hang of it, I think it's really a fun market to be in, and you can build great relationships, and the food is really good in Japan. So I hope many of you start thinking about coming over to Japan, and I'm excited to talk with everyone here today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And telekomust. My name is Nishikawa from city of Kobe. Let me briefly introduce myself. And I worked for automobile company for long years, responsible for marketing and branding, and joined the city of Kobe in 2020. And we've developed the acceleration program with 500 startups. And also, we just started the female entrepreneur program with the women's startup Love in Silicon Valley. And also, we established our startup fund in last year. And pleased to be here and what we do right now. Yeah, thank you.
All right. So let's start the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So in Estonia, we have 10 unicorns. And when I say that in Japan, I think Japan, it depends how do you count, but maybe not 10.
Yeah. So I want to say we're pretty much the same count as Estonia. So our population is 100 times X more larger, but we have about 10 unicorns. But it's rapidly growing in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. So the startup investment into Japanese startups have been only around 3-4 billion US dollars for the last 5 or 10 years. But in the last 2-3 years, it's more around 7 billion. And so top talent are going into startups, working for Japanese startups or foreign startups coming to Japan. Mm. So there's much more of a focus on startups now. And I think there's big themes in Japan that are quite wanted by the Japanese citizens or corporates. And maybe we can talk more about that, what kind of themes people are looking for in Japan later. Yeah.
Yoshi, where are Japanese startups located? Mm-hmm. Because, you're from Kobe. Kobe is known in Japan as a startup city.
Yeah.
But I'm from Tokyo, and I see also basically the startup scene blowing up in Tokyo. Many events, many accelerators, many large companies trying to collaborate more with startups. What's your experience in Kobe?
When it comes to startups, of course, Tokyo is the first market. And there are a lot of startups in Tokyo, and actually more than 80% of startups in Tokyo. But currently, the other local government are focusing on the startup support, and the startup coming out from the local, actually. And Kobe is one of the city that support startups very focused. And the more than 200 startups currently rising from Kansai and Kobe, and also including Osaka, Kyoto. There are lots more startups coming in. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's also this time at Latitude, there is a booth with Kobe City and Shibuya City, and I think in the audience you can find some people also from Fukuoka, which is another startup center in Japan. So things are getting more exciting.
Yeah.
I don't know, Eva, what's your outside perspective? Like when you look at Asia and different countries, how does Japan stand out, especially in a startup field?
I think it stands out more than the others, and I think because of the relationships between already existing venture capital that's been pouring into the market, and also because of this very strong ties with the two governments. For example, the MOU that was signed for digital cooperation. I mean, these things accelerate also the different connections on the startup level. So if there's governmental connections already there, it's a lot of also the VC interest and existing investments, then like the saying is, where it is something already, it will grow, and we can see that. And another hub that stands out is Singapore. Definitely we see that it's an incredible gateway for wider Asia. We see the same logic that we have good cooperation on a governmental level. We see strong VC support also on that side. So these two definitely pop out. But since we have Expo coming in 25 in Osaka, then of course this means a whole another ballgame for us. So we want to definitely invest more knowledge. We have perfect networks with VCs, with the corporate partners. Yesterday we had in Japan Innovation Day. We had lots of big corporates from Marubeni to Hitachi to... Yes, exactly. We have these incredible companies here in the audience today. So please take note that you talk to each other, not only with us on the stage, but also with each other here, because these companies, and just to give you a scale, that when you talk about big companies in Estonia, there are few offices in the world. When you talk about a company of sensible size in Japan, like yesterday I heard, the office number of different around the world is 133, 140 offices around the world. And we talk about investment, we talk about 60 million to give out of smart money. So this is just a bit of numbers as a background as well, that it's a different scale. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes very thought out products and services, but there's plenty of room, definitely, in Japan for Estonia.
I think, Eriko, you have seen also Estonian startups up close, and you have seen many Japanese startups, of course. So how would you explain to mostly Estonian audience, what are Japanese startups like? Like, what are kind of the main trends, and what kind of people do startups in Japan?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there is a really globalization and global best practices being adopted in Japan now. So I think it would be much easier for global startups like yourselves to raise money from Japanese VCs. The terms or the ways of investing in companies are becoming much more global. So before you might have seen odd clauses, Japanese investors requesting XYZ and not things that you would see in regular term sheets in the West or London, etc. But I think things are converging. So I think that's great for doing business. And in terms of talent, I think Japanese startups, whether they are the founder level or the engineer software side, they're also leveling up. So I think it's quite comparable to the other startups coming globally. So I think there's a lot of room for collaboration. The large corporates, like Eva said, they have a lot of resources for pilot projects and trialing new initiatives. And that might take a little bit of time, just like Eva said, a lot of strategic consideration on what's really the goal that you want to achieve here, what's the timeline, what's the win-win structure. But once you get that, I think it's really a good combination to try to work in Japan. Because in Japan, some of the themes that we really need to solve are huge issues. I mean, I think they're global, but sustainability is very important in Japan. So we're seeing increasing need for whether it's energy resource management or carbon sequestration. Japanese startups alone cannot solve those problems. So we're always looking for great innovations to come to Japan. And working with municipalities like Kobe is also a great way for especially sustainability startups or mobility startups. It's very interlinked. So I would say, start looking for people like the Kobe, startup ecosystem promoters, et cetera, to work with.
I just wanted to quick comment also that what we yesterday talked about, there's a lot of amazing hardware in Japan, but there needs to be an equally amazing software to help the innovation really get to the next level. So this is also, I think, one point where Estonia can help with the digital solutions, be it in green tech or otherwise, but really work with these big seasoned companies to make them faster and also to learn in the process. Because another thing, again, that I really want to stress is that Asia and Japan is incredibly advanced. Sometimes we tend to forget that. So, we are all the best, we know everything. But then again, it's a matter of really understanding where we match, where we complement, where we get smarter on both sides. And one very important thing in this incredibly turbulent world is also stability. And I think Japan is an incredibly stable partner. And this is a really investment in the long term rather than just sprinting through. So I think this is also something that I really wanted to emphasize, why my love for Japan is deepening every day.
Wow.
Yeah, I always explain in Japan that in Japan there is a very strong basically building ethics. So even the word monotsukuri, making things. So basically craftsmanship is like a beyond global level. But at the same time, when you make things, you can make things only once. So that's very, hardware is very strong. But software, you can actually change after it's ready. and if you apply the same logic, it doesn't really apply. So, and Estonia, as opposite of Japan, we are really strong in software. So in this sense, it feels like a great match. But yeah, in Kobe, if you talk about what kind of startups do you have in Kobe, and what kind of large companies do you actually have working with startups?
Actually, in Kobe, we have the big biomedical cluster, which is the one of the biggest biomedical cluster in Japan. And so there are so many healthcare-related organization, institution, and startups actually. And also we have heavy industry, existing heavy industry like Kawasaki and also Mitsubishi. So in order to improve their internal DX or something like that, those startups is coming out from Kobe actually.
Yeah, one of the interesting things in Japan, what I understand, but sometimes it's I'm kind of asking why, is that it's kind of perspective. What is commonly shared is that startups should work with large companies instead of doing everything by themselves. And this can be very helpful because large corporates they have lots of power, and market access through them could be very lucrative. But at the same time, they are large, they're slow. And as a startup, one thing you don't have is time. So what's your experience seeing Japanese startups work with large corporations?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million or €1 million question. But yes, it does take time to really align what they want, what each party wants. I think these are some simple know-hows or to-dos. But when your party, the Japanese party, the corporations, if the senior members are there, I think it's much easier to move forward. It's very different from the Western meritocratic system, where if it's a good idea, people want to showcase it and people want to promote it. It doesn't really work like that in Japan because people don't want to take risks. So unless it comes from the top, it's usually a little bit difficult to promote. I know, Raul, you've experienced this, but it's a lot about who are you speaking to, or do they have the power to make those changes or decisions? And this sounds a little bit negative, but the good thing is Japan is really desperate for change right now. So things are changing. So the themes we mentioned maybe green tech, sustainability, but and DX. So DX in Japan is like a huge buzzword. I don't think you hear that a lot here, but in Japan, DX is God. So it's digital transformation. So our productivity as a nation is very, very low, unfortunately. So we work long hours. People are working in one corporation for their whole lives, but their productivity is not high. And so we need digital solutions like software, whether it's any type of SaaS, productivity tools, et cetera, in all industries. So you can imagine from heavy industries to retail to food and beverages, everything. So we really need that digital transformation. And so if you can align those needs, I think now is a great time to work with Japanese companies.
I really like you said, $1 million question.
Yeah.
It's also $1 million answer.
Thank you.
So if you're really aligned, then it can be $1 billion answer. I think that needs to be emphasized here as well. But yes, there's always two sides of the story.
Yeah, actually, I know that the big company has money. Actually, I was there, and they have lots of retained earnings in the company. And they need to invest something new. But what we see right now is always they are looking for the pilot project first. And usually they don't set the exact criteria for the success when they are making the pilots. So once the pilot is done, it is not going to the further way, step forward. So that is sometimes a problem. So when you do the pilot project with the Japanese company, you need to set up the clear criteria for the success for the pilot project. That's the one way, yeah.
But how do you do that? Because it's a relationship where both parties have their maybe a little bit different interests. Because a large company, I think they look at startups as outside innovation department. So they would do something what they wouldn't be able to do inside their organization. Whereas as a startup, basically you just want to get more market, you want to grow, and you want to do more awesome things. Mm-hmm. So how do you find this common ground? I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's several ways. Again, I'm so grateful that Eva mentions Japanese and Raul. Japanese companies are quite ethical and long-term minded most of the times, which is a great thing. So they're not out to outbid other startups. It's not like they're comparing and using your competitors. And the first chance you have, they're going to exchange you. They're really there for the long term to align. So that's the good thing. And like they said, aligning the objective is important. And a lot of the times, if you can really financially align your incentives, so if there's an investment into your company, then you can work on a longer term pilot, figuring out what are those more commercial side KPIs that you want to hit. But since they're invested in you in a small scale, I think they're willing to do a little bit more than usual. But again, for taking that investment, I think you should be quite strategic and business minded and making sure there's no odd exclusivity contracts, etc. But aside from that, yeah, that's one way to align the incentives.
How can we can help from Estonian side or from a local municipality side?
I just wanted to have a quick comment because I know we have corporates in the room. I was just keen to hear what they would answer to that one. How do you align? So maybe yes, in the question round, I would really keen to hear that. But municipality, from Estonian side, that's what we do, right? This is why we are the agency helping. Pretty much most of the cases free of charge if whatever size company, whatever sector wants to go to Japan. And we have different services for that, for hiring an expert for a short term, exactly for the pilot you just mentioned, or to access the market, to test the partnership if it's reliable, to know how to expand in the market. So it's lots of different phases that you need the expertise, and then we do match these with the services we provide. So the state support is there. And also the people, sometimes they say, oh, the states, and they don't know, and it's so abstract, and are you sure that you're getting what we want? Well, that's why we are practitioners in the agency. We are not theoretical about it. We talk to companies every day, and also we adjust the services accordingly, be it COVID or be it other turbulence on the market. And that's exactly what's happening this year when we are expanding in Asia, because we see that the world, as we know it, is changing. So yes, there are many ways to combine these two.
Yeah, that's a difficult question, right? Always, if I know the answer, we can do anything what I do. So yeah, the one way is always maybe for startups. I don't have an answer right now. Sorry.
Okay, I'll maybe rephrase it for you. So, okay, if I'm Estonian startup and I'm interested, like what my opportunities in Japan would be. I know that you want to get foreign startups to relocate to Japan as well. You even have startup visa for foreign founders. So what would be your sales pitch be? Like why they should come to Japan?
Actually, Japanese government allows the municipality to issue the startup visa first, which enables you to come to Japan more easily. Usually, you need to get the management visa. It's sometimes difficult for startups to get it. So there is Shibuya and Kobe, also Fukuoka can issue such a startup visa. And also we have lots of subsidy for startups to set up their startups in Kobe, actually. And also we have the fund as well, so that you can make your business growth in the end. Yeah.
Maybe, I just thought of a small idea, but I know Web3 is a big theme in the this whole building right now, and that's also a big theme in Japan as well. And so my first point is, I've been trying to say this as well, but there's always these trends or buzzwords or things that Japanese companies or Japan is looking for at that moment. So digital transformation, Web3. So if you can really align your company to that theme, I think it's really much easier for Japanese corporates to understand, okay, so you're a Web3 company, you're from Estonia, digital e-government is very strong in Estonia, so they have an understanding of why they should work with you. So that's one thing. And then the other thing from Web3 is what I'm seeing is a very different approach. So I'm curious what the audience thinks. But the Web3 companies entering into Japan are not, necessarily trying to do top-down work with corporates. They're trying to build a community from the ground up, people and users and developers that are using the service and having these community meetups or, hiring from the ground, people that are interested in the service from day one. So if you want to, if your service is more consumer-facing, I think that approach could really work as well. And Japan's Gen Zs are growing too, and they're becoming more digitally native. So if they find a cool service and they like it, they're happy to join that community and promote it for you, for yourself, creating user-generated content. So I think that's also another interesting way that, foreign startups can enter Japan.
How competitive is Japan? I mean, it's a huge country. It's 100 times bigger population than in Estonia, but at the same time, it's rapidly aging. So basically by 2030, there will be 6 million people missing from the labor market. So basically there are like two growth markets in Japan, old people and foreigners. Or like what's the kind of low-hanging fruit when you want to come to Japan? What kind of, you mentioned Web3 and digitalization. Any other like examples? So like if you do like this, you would be successful in Japan quickly.
I just answered your own question. I think elderly tech, right?
Yeah.
An obvious solution. And obviously, the more, if there's an expat community, there are lots of different services that you need to provide. But I was just thinking a few steps back is when I compare Asia, different countries, where we are with Estonia, then it's such an advantage that Japan knows Estonia from a digital point of view. And we can't say that for the whole of Asia, at least not to that extent. So this is already one leverage point, that when you're already at the table with the VC, with the corporate, there's some knowledge and understanding already on a kind of bigger level. And when we come into the subsectors, then of course the deeper you know the market and the understanding what they need to, like you said, to align these expectations, then you have a head start already. But elderly tech is I can see that. But just yesterday I had a really long conversation about that, how little we have that and how little we think about it. We always constantly think about the future in terms of the future generations, But when we think about future and we look at the statistics, then we need to think about the aging population and how do we cater and what are the services that they need. I mean, one example, my mother is 75, she's working full-time, and it doesn't look like she's going anywhere to rest and have a pension and something. She says, give me more different services. I want to use them. I'm fully capable of doing X, Y, Z. And the question is, are there any services? No, really. So here I think, again, the combination with Japan and more of the aging population and the Estonian software services and kind of quick thinking, experimenting is a good match.
Yeah, actually, the mobility would be one option because, for example, the Kobe is a big city. We have dense area and rural area as well. So actually, in rural area, there are aging society is getting high, and so that they cannot move to hospital or supermarket without any public transportation. In that case, the mobility, like autonomous mobility or something like that, is really helpful actually. But right now, there are lots of regulation in Japan, so we need to clear out the regulation first. But still, there is a big potential in the future as well.
If I'm a startup and looking for investments, I am a startup in Estonia. I have a subsidiary in Japan, and we are looking for investments anywhere we can get them. And very often, like when I speak with a Japanese investor, because I'm basically getting investments into my Estonian entity, it becomes a problem, but not always. So, and when we look at the statistics, then Estonia has been doing extremely well. Estonian startups have been doing like phenomenal work in getting investments from Japanese investors over last years. And but even during COVID, things slowed down a little bit. But right now we're actually in an environment with weakening yen and like a war in Ukraine. Basically, what's a lot of this unpredictability in the like global environment. So, like, would Estonian companies still get investments from Japan? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think speaking maybe a little bit as an investor, it is a difficult market. But for earlier stage companies, I think it's still very attractive. You know, investors still want to make good investments, especially using this time as an opportunity because we're looking for returns in 5-7 years. If you're a mid to later stage or pre-IPO stage right now, of course, I know the markets are a little bit challenging. But so if you are an earlier stage company with a very innovative, very new model or a business segment that you're approaching, I think Japanese companies are still quite interested. In terms of, the exchange rates and the geopolitical instabilities or, changes, I think it will be part of the consideration. But there's increasing number of companies and VCs in Japan that are willing to make investments abroad. So I think it should be okay. But combining all the points made, I think it's important to say why Estonian startup. What's the alignment here? What do you bring to the table? So if that's clear, it should be okay.
So I don't know, how should Estonian startups promote themselves?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to come back to this point that you mentioned. There's also earlier the risk adversity of Japanese. I mean, here Estonia as a country works already like a perfect testing ground, so that you don't need to go and go to Japan to do all of these things. You can prove your points in Estonia as an experiment to see how good you really are. So I would say that's the first thing. If I were, and I have been a startup, if I would be again a startup, then I would definitely, you can prove things quickly here. You don't need to go anywhere to make your point. That's one thing. And if you're good here, and if you can show how quickly you can iterate, how quickly you can change and adapt, then that's already, you can take the next step and see what are the terms and regulations and all the stuff that comes in when you go to the market. But here I've seen many times. For example, myself, I used to run a conference in 2018 on the future of work and leadership, and one of the very known Japanese VCs came to me later and said, okay, you made it in a very practical way, and there were certain tools I would like to use. Can we get the conference to Japan? So it was really quick because of seeing how it worked, what could be adapted, and we could just get it to Japan. But first it had to be shown what it means in Estonia, how it worked with the audience. So I think this is the same also with the product and services.
Yeah, I think that's showing the model is really important. And maybe you know this, but Japanese companies are risk averse. But if one company does it, then they will all do it. So if one car company does it, all the other car companies are going to do it. So it's quite easy in that way. So you just have to prove to one of the top tier companies to convert your other customers.
And that's the positive domino effect.
Yes, yeah.
There's one question from the audience. Basically, I think maybe just you can actually answer it. If a startup comes to Japan, do they actually need to have a Japanese entity, or do they need to create a Japanese entity, or would it be still okay to operate as an Estonian company?
It's a difficult question, actually. Yeah, we have a fund, startup fund, and we usually invest in the domestic entity company. I mean, the Japanese entity company. But of course, if there is something innovative or very new technology, and we have a chance to invest in the, even if you are in Estonia operation, It depends actually.
Yeah, I think it depends on the regulations. If you have a selling branch, then you need to create an entity. If it's just a representative office, you can have just a representative office. So depends on certain regulations, but.
Yeah, I think one of the kind of interesting things what we have been seeing is that Japanese investors don't even only invest into Estonian startups, but they also invest into Estonian venture funds. There are or they set up venture funds in Estonia, and basically targeting not only Estonian startups, but like more in a wider region. So I think that's a great trend. So what do you think? Why do they do that? Why do they choose Estonia?
Yeah, like Eva said, Estonia is very, very famous in Japan for, being very advanced in the e-government schemes, digitalization, mobility to fintech. So, SaaS, you guys have them all. So, Japan really wants to learn from that. So there's, it's very true that increasing capital is coming here and looking to invest in you.
When the whole country works and thinks like a startup, and it's so compact that you can reach to everybody. I mean, from president to ministers so it's so tightly knit. And of course, when you want to change, and when you know you're good at something, well, the wise thing is to build more of that. I mean, now we also have the minister in the room who is here for Latitude, because we know that is really important. We know that this connection between the two countries, it makes a lot of sense to complement each other. And as a country, as a small country, knowing our strengths really, really well, we can only build on that. And of course, that is the reason why the funds invest. That is the reason why the startups keep on going towards these new faraway markets.
Actually, there is one very big news for the Estonian investor. But just a few days ago, Japanese government announced that they are going to establish a fund only for the overseas VCs who are interested in invest to Japanese startups. I'm not sure if they decided the fund size, but it's going to be like $1 billion. So it's very big. So for Estonian investors, that would be a good opportunity.
I think we have like last 5 minutes, so maybe we have some questions also from the audience. So I don't know if the mic is going around, but yeah, anybody? Okay, we have a question from up here. So Can we get a microphone in the first row?
I don't think there is microphones, so happy to repeat.
I'd like to hear your question being answered by the corporates. What
Okay.
I thought your question was interesting to ask.
Yeah, I'm still interested in that as well.
But okay, like what I was told, okay, there is no microphone, but basically there is QR code and like a thing, like if you can send questions through the digital channels, that would be very much appreciated. But okay, right now there is not really a question, but it's like more like a comment. What we get is that there is also like one of the exhibitors in the this one here. So like move away from this. So basically there is a Nordic Asian Venture Alliance exhibiting in the demo area, and they actually kind of platform connecting European startups with Japanese investors and vice versa. So it's definitely go and check it out. So that you will have opportunity to maybe learn about practical ways how to get connected. And let's see. Okay.
Well, Raul, so as a startup that you've worked in Japan, and if there's corporates in this room, what would your message to them be? How do you want them to be more of, or what do you want them to do?
Yeah. So basically, with corporations, what I felt was that it's very much focused on POCs, proof of concept projects, and when you do a proof of concept, usually they have an innovation budget, and they are kind of just, okay, let's think what can we do as innovation. And this is very often separate from the real business. And if it's separate from the real business, that's actually the reason why very often it doesn't lead to anything else. And people, they are kind of innovation people inside the company, and they're kind of kept separate from the revenue generation.
Yep.
So as a startup, you don't want to do just like one test. You want to do something which will lead to kind of continued cooperation. And that's why this like POC focused relationship, I think it's very, it's nice, but it could be more practical at the end. I don't know, like what's your kind of experience about that?
Yeah.
I think that's a very real comment that you just made right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So in this sense, Japanese large corporations, they're definitely good partners in Japan to have, but yeah, you have to be very kind of like selective actually, because at the end, because we as a startup, you don't really have time to do things which don't help you forward. So you have to choose those POCs and those partners who actually have real impact, instead of just doing like one showcase and kind of leaving it hanging over there.
So my tip there would be that Japanese corporates are publicly listed, and they have a lot of disclosures, and they usually have annual reports, and they also have something called chuke. Chuke is very big for them. It's their long-term business plan, and in their long-term business plan, they usually line out exactly what's important for them. So maybe it is mobility, or maybe it is their new healthcare insurance that is combined with digital biomarkers, creating people that are more healthy. So I would recommend you really read into those chukes, the long-term plans, and really make sure it's aligned with the core business, and it's not just an innovation project that they're doing to tick the box. So I think, that would be important.
But I think we have the last minutes and no more questions online. So let's 20 seconds each. What would be your message to Estonian startups, Estonian investors, Estonian audience, and why people should think about Japan as one of the options?
So just come and visit Kobe, because you can feel how Japan is great. And once you come here, everyone loves Japan, Kobe. So just come and visit. Thank you.
Yes, my also message is please come to Japan as well, because Japanese startups can really learn from you, the way you do business. You're always, disrupting things in, I guess, very positive way. Japan still lacks that, so it's a really great inspiration for Japan. So I'm always excited for great companies to come to Japan, my country. So thank you. Yeah.
And last but not least, I would say that Japan and Estonia know more of each other than sometimes we think compared to other Asia. That's one point. And the other point is, don't forget that the whole country is a startup. So I think it serves both ways. Don't forget that as well. And last, elderly tech. I must say, it's not going anywhere, and there's so much room to innovate.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the great discussion, and thank you for listening. So I really hope we gave some new ideas, and there will be more things happening between Estonia, between Nordics, and Japan and Asia. Thank you very much.
Thank you.